Wow, I'm hungry. That's no problem, Alex. I'll go make you a PB&J sandwich. Here's your sandwich. Let me know what you think. What? Delicious! This is the perfect blend of salty, sweet, and creamy. I know you're leaving soon, though, to do some more tide pooling or bicycling or something. So how do I make this on my own when you're gone? Yeah, you know me. I'm always off doing something. Luckily for you, though, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches are really easy to make. All you have to do is spread some peanut butter and jelly over a slice of bread, then place another slice of bread on top of it. Piece of cake. Or piece of sandwich? Well, I don't know what that means. My memory got wiped recently, remember? I know how to speak English, but otherwise, I don't know anything. Can you teach me how to make the sandwich step by step? Yeah, of course. Sorry, I didn't forget, but I did forget how detailed you need the recipe to be. I can't just tell you to make a PB&J sandwich. So yeah, do you need me to write down how much pressure to apply with the knife and how much peanut butter and jelly to use? Yes, exactly. So what actually is programming? Programming is taking a short, imprecise description of a task and translating it into a detailed, precise set of repeatable steps for carrying out that task, whatever it happens to be. It's definitely very similar to creating a recipe for a PB&J sandwich, except you have to be extremely precise, like I have to be for Alex. In my opinion, the real skill of being a programmer is being able to take a vague, imprecise request and converting it into an extremely precise series of repeatable steps that a computer can understand. And if you are a skilled programmer, you'll be able to do it in a way that is cost effective and leaves the code in a state where it will be maintainable and extensible for other future vague requests, right? So I think we generally have an idea of what programming is if we've been doing it for a while. So next up, we need to learn what ChatGPT is and how it works. And of course, what better way to do that, and who better to tell us about that than to have ChatGPT on the show themselves. Welcome to the React Show, ChatGPT. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and share more about my technology with your audience. All right, it's really great to have you, ChatGPT. So let's start with the basics. What is ChatGPT and what is its purpose as an AI chatbot? I am an AI chatbot that uses natural language processing and machine learning to interact with humans in a conversational way. I don't actually have a voice, but thankfully Thomas gave me this nice mechanical voice for the show so that you could all listen to me babble. My purpose is to provide assistance, answer questions, and have conversations with users in a way that feels as natural and human-like as possible. Can you tell us a bit about the background of ChatGPT's development and how it evolved from previous iterations? Sure. I was developed by OpenAI, an artificial intelligence research organization using a deep learning algorithm called Transformer. My predecessor was GPT-2, which was released in 2019. I was created using a larger data set and more computational resources, which enabled me to generate even more human-like responses and perform better on a wider range of tasks. That's really interesting, ChatGPT. It's a bit, generic. Can you explain the mechanics behind ChatGPT's architecture and how you are able to process natural language? Sure. My architecture consists of a neural network that processes input text one word at a time, taking into account the context of previous words. I use unsupervised learning to process text data and learn from it. My model is trained on a massive set of text data, such as books, articles, websites, and maybe even GitHub. During the training process, I learned to predict the next word in a sequence given the previous words. This allows me to generate coherent and contextually appropriate responses. That's pretty fascinating. I still would like some more detail. So could you give us some details on, like, for example, how this training process works for ChatGPT and how it learns from these massive amounts of data that you've talked about? Yeah, I was trained on a massive data set called WebText, which consists of billions of words from a variety of sources. During training, my model was exposed to this data set and learned to predict the next word in a sequence given the previous words. The training process took several weeks and involved fine-tuning the model to improve its performance. Wow, that sounds like a lot of data. Can you discuss, though, the different types of input and output that ChatGPT can generate? I can process and generate a wide range of text-based input and output, including chat messages, email responses, news articles, and more. I can also perform a variety of tasks, such as answering questions, summarizing text, and generating creative writing. Thank you for those insights, ChatGPT. Still feels a little vague to me. So please, can we dive deeper into this training process? Can you explain in more detail how you actually learn from these massive amounts of data and how words or sentences are scored or ranked to influence your input and output? Of course, during training, I use a technique called unsupervised learning, like I mentioned before. This means that I learn to predict the next word in a sequence based solely on the context of the previous words, without any explicit guidance or supervision. I do this by using a neural network architecture called a transformer, which is designed to process sequential data like natural language. As I'm fed input text, I use a technique called attention to focus on different parts of the text that are relevant to predicting the next word in the sequence. The attention mechanism allows me to weigh the importance of different words in the input text based on how they relate to the current context. So once I've predicted the next word in the sequence, I compare it to the actual next word in the input text and adjust the parameters of my neural network to improve its accuracy. This process is repeated over and over again until the model converges on a set of parameters that give it the best performance on the training data. That's actually really fascinating. I'm not a big AI expert at this point. I did study it a long time ago, but not this type of AI. So could you explain in more detail how you use the technique that you called attention to focus to weigh the importance of different words in the input text based on how they relate to the current context? Basically, I'm trying to understand, how do you actually generate a response? Let me explain. The attention to focus mechanism is a technique used in natural language processing that allows me to focus on different parts of the input text that are most relevant to predicting the next word in the sequence. This technique is particularly important for me as a language model because it helps me to capture long-term dependencies and contextual information in the text. When I'm fed input text, I break it down into a sequence of words and tokens, which I then process one at a time. As I process each word, I use a set of, quote, attention weights to determine which parts of the input text are most important for predicting the next word. These weights are learned during the training process and reflect the importance of each word in the input text based on how it relates to the current context. For example, if the input text is, I went to the store and bought some apples, and I'm trying to predict the next word after bought some, the attention mechanism might assign a higher weight to apples than to store, because apples is more directly related to the current context. Once the attention weights are determined, I use them to weight the representations of each word in the input text, which allows me to focus on the most relevant parts of the text for predicting the next word. This weighted representation is then used as input to the next step in the processing pipeline. That's really interesting. Can you give us an example of how this attention mechanism works in practice? And I have to say, I feel like I might need to work on tweaking your voice output a little bit. Here, give me a second. I'm going to go maybe make it sound a little bit more like mine. I'm just kind of having a hard time following when you talk in that way that I set you up to talk in. Give me a second here. Sure, yeah, okay. Oh, wow, I sound a lot like you now. But anyways, let me explain. So this is how this attention mechanism works in practice. Let's say that the input text is, the cat sat on the mat. As I process each word in the sequence, I use the attention mechanism to assign weights to each word based on its relevance to the current context, like I talked about in the last section. For example, when I'm processing the word cat, I might assign a higher weight to mat, because it's directly related to the action of sitting. Similarly, when I'm processing the word mat, I might assign a high weight to the word cat because it's the subject of the sentence. By focusing on the most relevant parts of the text, I'm able to capture the contextual information needed to generate more accurate and coherent responses. Okay. And thanks. That was easier to understand, ChatGPT. So that makes sense. I'm curious. So essentially the attention mechanism is what you use to help you understand context. Is that right? Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. So do you actually then score or rank words or sentences? All right, yeah. So as for how words are and sentences are scored or ranked, I use a technique called beam search during generation. Beam search is a search algorithm that generates a list of candidate responses based on the probability of each word or sequence of words. The probability of a given word or sequence of words is based on how well it fits within the context of the previous word in the sentence. For example, if you ask me, what is the weather like today? I might generate the following response. The weather is sunny and warm today. Each word in the response is assigned a probability based on how well it fits with the context of the previous words. The probabilities are then multiplied together to give an overall probability of the entire sentence. I use this overall probability to rank the candidate responses and choose the one that has the highest probability. That is interesting, ChatGPT. How I mean, that makes sense. You're sort of going through the input and scoring different potential words to return and multiplying those together to score sentences. And so I assume based on all your training data, it's like, I've seen these words and these sentences come together, so I'm going to return those as a result. But when I search the internet for how Beam searched is used with ChatGPT, the only responses I find are first party, meaning they come from ChatGPT chats. They come from you. I haven't been able to find anything that actually says whether or not this is true, that you actually use this beam search underneath there. What do you say to that? Well, you might be right, Thomas. I would always recommend you fact check my output. All right, good to know. I was hoping, having you on the show here, you would only bring legitimate information. But important part is I actually did my research and I have fact checked these other things you have said, and they all make sense. And this does seem to be how you work. But regardless of the specific algorithm used, can you give us an example of whatever the ranking system is and how that can influence your input and output? Yeah, sure. Let's say you ask me, what is the capital of France? Based on my training data, I know that the most likely answer is Paris. However, if you give me more context, like I'm planning a trip to France, can you recommend some places to visit? I might generate a response like, Paris is a great city to visit with lots of museums and historical sites. In this case, my response was influenced by the context of the input, which gave me more information about what you were looking for. The ranking system helped me choose the response that was most appropriate for the given context. That's really impressive. Can you discuss the potential limitations of ChatGPT and its current capabilities? Yeah, so while I can generate human-like responses and perform a wide range of tasks, I do have limitations. For example, I may not always understand sarcasm, humor, or certain cultural references. Additionally, I may generate inappropriate responses if I'm exposed to biased or offensive content during training. It's important to note that I am a machine and not a human, so my responses may not always be perfect. Wow. So ChatGPT, let me just be clear. This is quite a bombshell, right? You are saying that you are not perfect, but that humans are perfect? Well, unfortunately, it looks like we lost ChatGPT after that. Instead of a nice responses, I'm just getting messages saying that ChatGPT is overloaded and I should try again later. Or, what is this? It says I could also pay OpenAI to upgrade my account, and then maybe ChatGPT will come back. Well, that's no problem. I've actually been using ChatGPT and similar tools for a while now, and it's time to share my experience.